Navigating through Blender can be pretty easy, as well as transforming any object you have in your scene. To navigate through Blender, I can do so with this list of icons we have at the top right corner of the 3D viewport. Now let's start with this. This gizmo here allows me to rotate the view to see around the object. Just imagine having a flower vase in our scene and we want to see the bottom, the top and the sides. We can do so with the rotate view gizmo over here. I can also zoom in and zoom out of the scene using this magnifying glass icon here, and I can pan around to move the view. Now of course I may want to see through the lens of my camera, so I can tap on this icon to see the view of the camera when we want to render whatever scene we have set up. Now remember, we're going to be using shortcuts a lot, so to do so we can try using the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We can scroll in or scroll out to zoom in or zoom out. Now in case you do not have a 3-button mouse, no worries, you just go to Edit, Preferences, Inputs and Emulate 3-button mouse. So once you check on this, you're good to go. Go over to the 3D viewport once again, and now we can click on Alt and left click our mouse, and you can now rotate the view. You can also click on Alt and Control and the left mouse button to zoom in or zoom out, and finally Alt and Shift to pan the view. You can switch to the camera view by using numpad 0 and click on numpad 0 to get back to the normal view. Now we've been able to establish how to navigate through our 3D viewport scene, but we might need to start editing the object, right? So to do so, let's start by looking at this lineup of icons here by the far left of our 3D viewport. Now we have this move icon that once I click on it and select any object in my scene, I can see a gizmo assigned to it. Now this gizmo allows me to move the object depending on the direction I move it to by clicking on any of these arrows, and I am constraining the movement to the z-axis in this case. You can tell whatever axis you're working with by spying from this gizmo here. So you can see this is for the z-axis, this is for the x-axis, and this is for the y-axis. It's also a similar case. Let me Ctrl Z to get it to the center for now. When you click on the rotate button, you can also rotate based on whatever axis you select. In this case, I can see that the lines are highlighted once I get close to it, so I can constrain my rotation to those axes. You can also freely rotate the object by tapping anywhere within this light gray circle highlight here, and it will allow you to rotate the object freely. I should mention that if you click on any of these, you can see the green square, the red square and the blue square, it helps you to exempt that axis. In this case, if I click on the green axis, it's going to move the object along only the z and x axis and not on the y axis. The same for the blue icon. It's going to constrain the movement to only the x-axis and y-axis and not on the z-axis, so it's not going up or down. And the final thing is scale, where once you click on scale, you can also scale the object depending on whatever axis you select, the z-axis, the x-axis, and the y-axis. And you can also ensure that you scale on two axes and leave out another axis depending on whichever you select. In this case, I am selecting the blue square, which is going to allow me to scale along the x-axis and y-axis without scaling on the z-axis. The transform icon holds all the other icons or all the other functions for transformation, in the sense that you now have a free tool to give you functionalities of movement, rotation, and scaling all in one. However, we're going to be using a lot of shortcuts for this. A quick way to transform objects in the scene is to use the shortcut G to move the object around. And we can actually constrain this to any of the axes by tapping Z if we want to constrain it to the Z axis, or tap X to constrain it to the X axis, or Y to constrain it to the Y axis, and escape to get back. Another way to rotate it is to click on R. To rotate it, remember, we can constrain it on the Z axis by tapping Z, X axis by tapping X, or Y axis by tapping Y. And to scale it, well, we can do this by tapping S, and it's going to scale it across every axis until we tap on Z if we want to constrain to the Z axis, Y to constrain it to the Y axis, and X to constrain it to the X axis. Now I should mention something for us to take note of, that all these actions we have done is with respect to the world origin. The world origin is the center of the environment, the virtual environment we have here, in the sense that if I were to draw the origin of this object itself, I will just get my annotation tool for demonstration purposes. So the origin of this object itself should go somewhat in between here and here. So this should be the z-axis of this box, and this should be the x-axis. We usually call this sort of coordinates the local coordinates for the object itself with respect to the world coordinates. The world coordinates is usually called the global coordinates, while this that I drew here is local coordinates. Now, to make sense of what I just did, I'm going to rotate this object across along the z-axis by tapping R and Z. And if you look closely, you would see that there is sort of a deviation from the z-axis of the local coordinates of this box. Now, if I want to rotate across the local coordinates, I can tap Z again, and you can see that it's more aligned to the z-axis of the box. Same thing with X. You can see there's a deviation from the local to the global, and if I tap X again, it's parallel to what we drew. You'll find this handy when we start building, and it's just for you to take note of it right now. Once we start working with our projects, I'll introduce some of these other tools here, but I think we're good to go. And just like we said, for the object mode, we get to work on the object as a whole. But if I were to tab into edit mode by tapping on tab, I can select any face. Remember that we are currently on face select, and once I tap on G, I can move that face, constrain it to Z for the world coordinate or Z again for the local coordinate. Same thing as if I were to move any of the vertex, G, X, or X again. So we'll be able to, make some nice changes to these objects by using these little shortcuts that we've learned. Now tab back into object mode, and we have a full interesting object that we can work with.